Hey everyone, welcome back. We are going to be focusing on Gustave Caillebotte's Paris Street Rainy Day. Man, what a painting! I don't know why I said it that way, but I was going to say what a great painting for to learn about composition, but it just came out like I was a sports announcer or something. So yeah, let's take a look at this miraculous piece. This piece by Gustave Caillebotte is also in the Art Institute. All of my pieces that we're studying is at the Art Institute of Chicago, and this piece is massive. It's almost life-size, like a life-size scale. And there's a really fascinating video that I found on YouTube about this, about the woman that resurfaced this painting. And I have to kind of mention this because, as you notice in the painting that I'm doing right now, as I'm blocking in all the big elements of this piece, is I started off with a yellow background, right? And I think I was looking at the tinge of yellow, of course, and how it is in the piece, right? And overall, it's almost like a tan-ish color, not even yellow. But I also wonder if I was looking at a different variation of this piece while I was painting this. Anyhow, what I'm getting at, I saw this really interesting video about on YouTube about the lady that resurfaced this painting and how she removed a lot of the varnish, and the varnish over time will yellow. And what a difference it made in the whole composition, how they're able to notice, like, even the earring on our main subject, our woman, they thought it was a pearl at first, and then after she resurfaced it, or removed all the old varnish and saw the true colors or whatever, it appeared to be a diamond. But anyhow, this piece is truly a miraculous piece for us as the viewer for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to break this down for you as we speak. So first of all, let's talk about the composition. This thing is composed very symmetrically. We have the line of the light post coming directly down the middle. So it's composed vertically, as far as we have that vertical line coming down. And both sides are pretty balanced as far as it's a weighted balance, meaning both sides are different, but they feel equally balanced in weight. We have the heaviness of the building in the background, and almost the negative space of that street, balanced with the absence of space in the sky of the building, and the heaviness of the couple walking towards us. Okay, next we're going to be talking about that it also has that cross, that plus sign shape. We have the line coming down through the middle, and then the horizontal line of the street is cutting through. Of course, it's not perfectly horizontal, it is more diagonal, so it does give us a little bit of that dynamic shape to it. And you can see at the moment in time on the painting that where that balance is, it's really starting to take shape, where that balance is coming into play. Also notice that I am painting the way I think it looks in the background, even though I can't see all of that information. Like, for instance, the building behind the umbrella is really hidden a lot by the couple's umbrella, right? But I know that building is going to go back off into space, so I'm just going to paint it in like that. And the other buildings, same thing. It's pretty blocked, but I don't need all of that information to know that that information exists in this environment. So I can just paint it in and then paint over it later when I add my foreground figures into it. All right, so we're going to talk about some more parts of composition in this that I find truly interesting. The first one is, I think, kind of the obvious thing that you can see in this piece, and that is the gaze following. We talk about, like, we will stare at the line of our subject's gaze to see what they are looking at. This is kind of interesting because we can't see what they're looking at. They're looking off screen or off canvas, right? And we know that there's something happening off canvas that we cannot see, that is distracting them from this guy who's going to bump into them. And he's like up against the wall, right? There's this wall right next to them. They're too distracted by like what's going on the opposite side. And this guy is going to have to be like, oh, he has his umbrella. They're going to crash into each other. And this is like moments before the crash. The little awkward bump. Well, you should have watched where you were going. You know, and they're like, oh, well, did you see that thing across? Oh, we're so sorry. You know, what is going on that's so distracting? I'm really curious. But so that is the pretty obvious thing. And as you can see, I'm starting to lay everything in. This was actually an incredibly challenging thumbnail study for me. And I thought it was going to be easy. I was like, oh, this looks great. Just lay it in. This is the second time I did this thumbnail study. The first time I did it, I just actually realized that I painted it too big. It wasn't my thumbnail size. And it took me like 4 times as long to complete it. And it was too detailed, and that was not the point of doing a thumbnail study for this course. The whole point was to learn about composition. So anyhow, I ended up redoing it again and came up with this idea of doing the yellows first and then starting to add some of the colors in later. Some things that you're not able to see in this piece, and I would really recommend kind of looking at it on their website or in the actual reference photo, is that the people in the foreground, our dominant subjects, are actually slightly out of focus compared to the guy walking in the middle of the street who is in focus. So we were talking about selective focus in our course, and about how in films you can shift the focus to really focus on like what you want people to look at, to view at, right? So how was this possible back then, right? This was the 1800s. This was made in 1877. So photography was a relatively new like technology that Caillebotte was very fascinated in. And as you know, in photography, you can play with the focal points and what you want to be in focus and what you do not want to be in focus. So he was able to take that idea of this focus range and apply it to a painting, which really wasn't done back then, right? It would be like a lot of things were in focus, but this idea of camera optics changing the way we see our paintings started to come into play then. Now, or then, at 1877, right? And I think that's something really interesting to know, because when the technology changed, art changed as well. And what does that mean for our foreground subjects too? Okay, so we know that there's this big action happening. These people see something happening. They're the biggest subjects in focus. Well, not, I'm sorry. They're the biggest subjects in our painting, and we're drawn to them instantly. And then we're drawn to whatever they're looking at, which really does bring the eye around the piece, creating this whole full circle, golden spiral back around to this guy about to hit them, which you may even miss. You may not even notice that they're about to collide with each other because you're so focused on them, and then you kind of look around at everything going on around the piece. So the interesting thing is, even though they're slightly out of focus, there's so much action going on with them that it really creates this juxtaposition of ideas as well. Something like this movement, as well as this moment in time right before this little accident, and then the things that are and are not in focus. But something else to consider is cameras at this time would not be able to capture this scene, because any kind of movement would create a blur effect. So even though he was very into photography, he was kind of combining some of the ideas of photography into this piece, but also like making a painting, he's allowing the ideas to be fully conceptualized onto this painting where he wouldn't be able to capture this onto a camera at that point in time, which I find really fascinating. So next what we're going to talk about is the fashion. So really interesting. This was like the hippest, like in fashion. Everything here was of the newest of the times. The umbrella, that like push-up type of umbrella, was new. Their fashion was new. The streets being paved like that was new. So what we're looking at right now is a piece that was very hip, very like of the time when it was created. And even though we're looking at this from the future, you know, and we see, oh, this, it's like if we were like a child, look at these people from the olden days on their stone roads or whatever. This is really such an important example of creating artwork of our time and why important it is to really capture the feeling of life in right now, which I think is very, very challenging sometimes. We always want to, well, I think because we look at masters' work so much, and the masters really are something we consider from the past because we've had a lot of time to analyze and teach and study. So we call them the masters, even though there are masters creating works right now. But the way our education system works is we're more focused on like the past and also learning about the present. I think it's important almost to combine the two. And I think there's a lot of artwork of our time that is getting overlooked because we're so focused on things that were great or because they were done previously in a different way. Anyhow, what I'm trying to get at though is when we're creating paintings, really what we're creating is a time capsule. And I know that we love to replicate styles from the past, but what is in fashion now? What do our streets look like right now? What do the cars look like right now? Because in 50 years, 100 years from now, when people look back at that, they're going to be like, wow, what are all those like wires hanging in the sky? Well, that's how they got their electricity. What? You know, why are those cars? Like, what are, you know, like there's so many things that are of the moment right now and possibly on the verge of ending. And we don't even really think about this because we're living every day in the moment. But how valuable it is to pay attention to the things that are in the moment right now, because things are changing very quickly. And even in my own lifetime, and I'm only 37, but like how much has changed since, you know, I was born, from no internet to internet, and then how much has changed because of that. Because things are changing so quickly now, I think it really is important for us at least to start to acknowledge how we would capture brief moments in time right now. And that's my own personal opinion. Obviously, we all create artwork for our own purposes, but I think as far as studies go, the value of a sketchbook is invaluable. No, or, you know, just, I think it's really important for us to really take some time to acknowledge the beauty in our own lives, in our own days, our own families and friends. And we can do that very simply with thumbnail sketches or just having a sketchbook or just writing or little things to document what it is in our world that makes it so unique of this place and time. By creating images of that, especially when you're focusing on painting what's in front of you. Like, I don't think we do a lot of plein air anymore right now. A lot of it is pre-planned from a reference photo. We go out, we take photos, we come back and we paint from that photo. Because it's easy and there's no wind or rain, right? It makes it easier for us to have a controlled setting. But one thing that happens when you do paint plein air is you start to notice things that impressionists would notice, like the changing of the light. And when you start to include those things into your paintings, it makes it come alive more, because capturing light is a very challenging thing to do. And if you're a painter or draw, if you draw, or really any kind of artist, you can understand how difficult it is to capture realistic looking light. But anyhow, when you have to sit there and say, how am I going to capture that reflection on that window? You have to blur your eyes, tilt your head, look at it from all angles. You then are pretty much breaking down a very complex idea into, how would I create that in 3 brush strokes? You kind of lose that when we are sitting in front of a reference photo. Trust me, I know. When you look at a reference photo, you're trying to make it as accurate to the photo, as opposed to how accurate it is to the idea or the feeling of being there in real life. I'm not saying that the photo is wrong either, because there's millions of ways to create artwork, and that is one way that I create artwork, is using photography, because I can't paint plein air just for my own circumstances at this moment in time in my life. But anyhow, it is something to note, and it is something to really pay attention to when you're thinking, hey, maybe I should just take a sketchbook with me out one day and study the world around me. Okay, back onto the painting. So we talked a lot about the composition, and one thing to note is that when we add in vibrant colors, warm colors, especially on a rainy street in Paris, it's going to bring the viewer's eye to that part of the piece. He did it very strategically, where he led it to, all right, look at the original painting. I think it can be very easy to miss the action that is about to take place, but he put this red wall in between the 3 people that are about to collide. And by doing that, by having that red wall in between, the eye is drawn right to that guy who is off screen. And I say off screen, but I mean off canvas. And he's not really the primary focus either. It's hard to know exactly what the primary focus is meant to be, but it's almost like a humorous piece. It's very beautiful, but there's also some humor in it. And I think that's another thing to consider, is I think we oftentimes think of artwork as being so serious, but then when you start to look at the events taking place, it makes you break down these serious pieces into just real life, and how these little moments, part of the bigger picture, are funny, beautiful, scary, fleeting. And how are we going to tell that story? And I think that he did such an amazing job of adding that red. It's like an orange red wall to draw the viewer's eye and connect the 2 parties together. You see that red throughout the entire piece though, and it's on the buildings, as you can see in the background. It's on the wheels, it's on the underside of some of the umbrellas. And by using that same orange red throughout the piece, it's creating a balance throughout, and it's also drawing the eye around as well. Funny thing, I was not going to include this piece at all. I actually took it out completely. And then I had a licensing problem with one of my studies, and ended up bringing this one back in. And I was like, I can't believe I almost didn't do it, but I thought it was too messy. I thought my painting was too messy. I thought my thumbnail was too sloppy, and I ended it early. I didn't really finish it. I just kind of roughly put the figures in. But it ended up being kind of a happy accident, that the other piece was licensing problem forced me to remove that one, and thought about me like putting this one back in. And the reason why is because I'm trying to teach you that thumbnail sketches are such an excellent way to learn, and we're not striving for perfection. So how silly of me would it be to remove this piece because I didn't think it was perfect enough for the lesson? It like totally goes against what I feel about teaching. Like the whole thing about this course is like we're not striving for perfection, we're striving to understand, to learn. And this is a great piece to learn composition. There's so much here that we can learn about. So I'm so glad that I put it back in. But yeah, this study will cut off pretty short at the end. So just be aware of that when I cut this video off sooner than you probably expect. Okay, next let's talk about the weather. Weather is a very important part for paintings. I think that we typically like to paint sunny days because it makes it easy for us. It's something that it's nice to look at. We're pretty familiar with how things look during daylight, sunshine, with no weather conditions being off. I think it's hard for us to figure out how we would paint colors during those conditions as well. So I think we tend to want to do what's easy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But man, we can learn a lot about painting on a rainy day. Now, do you actually see any raindrops in the original piece? I do not. He did a great way of making it feel wet and rainy without seeing any raindrops. And there is something interesting about this too, because let's think about back to photography. If he was trying to take a picture on a rainy day, he would not be capturing the raindrops. What would happen is everything would look like a blur. But what you would get is a little bit of that atmosphere and the effects of the atmosphere and the wetness of the ground and the surface and the reflections. You would capture that on a photograph back then. So I think that it's kind of interesting because he did really kind of capture it without actually capturing the action of the rain. So if you're trying to avoid painting something like that, like rain, there's so many different ways that you can go about it and still give that effect, make your audience aware that you are painting a rainy day. You just have to be creative in the way that you convey that or portray that. So this is kind of where I'm going to end it with this one. But anyhow, thank you so much for spending some time with me on this one, and hopefully you were able to learn a few interesting tidbits. All right, take care.